I want to talk about science. Science as sort of a religion, or science as a cover-up for your own insecurities. I see a lot of people using science as the end-all, be-all solution to every problem, and with that comes this sort of pompous attitude of a righteous attitude, actually. A righteous attitude of I'm right? I'm right and you're wrong because I am a person of science. And science is concrete. Science is factual, right? So my first thing I want to say about this is if science, what is science, right? Science is theories that have been proven based on concrete evidence, physical evidence, right? And so a lot of people will use science and speak about it as if it's 100% concrete, which first of all, it's not. And second of all, to an individual who is not a scientist, all that they are stating when they are telling you about science is something that somebody else has told them. So, in their subjective experience, they have not proven these things for themselves. They have not experienced the proof of these things themselves, which is what science is. Science is an experience of a proof of a law or a theory, right? But most people who talk about science and who use science as a explanation for the universe have not firsthand experienced the proof of these theories. And I'm not saying science is all bogus or anything, because it's, it's very helpful, it's very true, most of it. And as a human species, we have gotten very far using science. So, but there's a lot of things that science doesn't explain at all. And there's a lot of times that I see people, well, there's no scientific evidence for this, so therefore it's not true. But I want to take it to a scientific level real quick. So that by the scientific method, by the principles of science, to prove something, to know something, to have a fact, it has to be experienced. You have never, ever, unless you're a scientist, and even then, it's a very specific field normally, so you haven't experienced that much of science. But you, as a person, are actually not being scientific when you explain science, because you have not experienced for yourself the cause and effect or the factual evidence of these scientific theories. You are operating based on belief. You're believing someone else's word, right? What is religion? A belief of someone else's word, right? So anytime someone is explaining science as factual and as the end-all be-all and claims to be a very scientific person and believes in science, they have a righteous attitude, I'm right, righteous, which is sort of the base of religion, being righteous, being right. And they're actually coming from a very biased perspective because they're operating based off of what other people have told them or beliefs. They're not even operating off of their own facts. So they're coming from a biased place to begin with. They're coming from a place of other people's ideas. And they aren't able to, well, they are able to, but they choose not to think for themselves and look into what reality really is. And then they, there's a insecurity inside of them of they don't know the answers. They don't know why we're here. They don't know the answers to the universe. Right? And another point to go into is if you have to explain the universe complexly, if it takes you a long time to explain what the universe is through different scientific words and stuff, then I can just tell you, I know for a fact that you're not right, because the explanation for the universe must be simple. It must be extremely simple. Because if you think about it, the most advanced technology or the most advanced mechanics is actually the simplest. Because the first mechanics that you're going to make are going to be extremely inefficient and complicated, right? The more complicated something is, the more inefficient it is. So actually, the simpler something is, the less complicated something is, the more efficient it is, and therefore the more evolved, or the more advanced it really is. So it seems kind of counterintuitive. But anyway, let's get back to the point here. When I try to explain, and this doesn't happen too much, but I get this vibe from a lot of people. When I try to explain how the universe works, or something that I've been thinking about, a theory that I'm sort of contemplating, no one takes me seriously. Not no one, but these types of people won't take you seriously and will point to science and say, well, there's no factual evidence for that. But what's really going on here is, once again, you're insecure about your misunderstanding of the universe, and you haven't actually put work in and time in to contemplate different ideas and to think for yourself and not just believe other people's ideas, and you're not thinking for yourself, right? And so another point about science I would like to say is, as the world evolved, over centuries and centuries, millennia, what happened was the Catholic Church controlled the world, right? The Catholic Church controlled the information. They had the Bible. And you weren't allowed to have the Bible. The Catholic Church was the only one allowed to have the Bible. Not only were you not allowed to have the Bible, but the Catholic Church had all of the information. They had the library. They had all of the books. So they would guard information so that people, so that they had power over people. The Catholic Church then, if you know a little bit about it, they, were horrible. They massacred people. They're worse than fucking Hitler. They were much worse than Hitler. And they're still around. Isn't that lovely? Anyway, the Catholic Church controlled all of the information, and therefore the Catholic Church controlled the world, and still do. Check out some pictures of the Vatican, where the Pope preaches, or whatever he does. That'll blow you away. Check out the statue that the Pope sits on. That'll blow you away. Anyway, so the Catholic Church guards all the information and only releases things that they want the public to be influenced by, right? They're not actually releasing real information. They're releasing information based on how they want to control people. And eventually what happened was religion sort of got unpopular because, they were killing tons and tons of people, and people were like, okay, fuck this. God doesn't want everybody dead. This is sort of fucked up. And so we need something new. And so what happened? The Catholic Church then started to control the scientific information. And they rebranded themselves as science. And so now you have people who are scientific believers, which is exactly the same, because think about it, you want to control the world, you need to get with the times. And so you update and you make it seem like you're very logical and I'm very cynical. I don't take anything seriously until it's proven. right? And that's actually a horrible mindset to be in, because the universe is infinite, right? And if you don't agree with that the universe is infinite, then show me the wall. Show me where the stopping point of the universe. Because if you can find the stopping point of the universe, then you're right and I'm wrong. But there's no stopping point in the universe. I can guarantee that. It's very simple. It's just like there's always something smaller and there's always something bigger. There just always is. There's no wall. If I went out into space, I could go forever and ever and ever. I would never reach a wall, unless you want to say that there's a wall or some kind of blockage that just sort of ends the universe. Maybe you would say, oh, well, the universe at some point, there's no more planets, there's no more stars, it's just black. Well, that's still infinite. It still goes on forever. It doesn't matter if there's nothing. Nothing is still something. So what I'm saying is, in an infinite universe, everything is possible. So cynicism is not scientifically accurate, because the universe is infinite, and therefore everything is possible. Everything that can happen will happen. Everything that can exist does exist, right? By definition of infinity. A lot of times I think when you talk about infinity, our brains cannot comprehend infinity. It's too big. A lot of times you think of infinity, you think of infinite space, or you think of infinite numbers, or you think of infinite whatever. But what you forget is infinity is all-inclusive. It's not, in math you have multiple types of infinity. In math you can do infinity times infinity. But that's not infinity then, right? Like, infinity includes infinity times infinity. Because infinity, as a concept, includes all. It's all-inclusive. It's everything. So, it includes infinite timelines, infinite possible realities, infinite planets, infinite everything. Everything's infinite. There's infinity within infinity everywhere. There's an infinite amount of grains of sand. You know what I mean? Like, it within itself, it repeats. It's a fractal, right? So within an infinity, there's infinity, infinity, infinity. Anyway, but that's also included within the whole of infinity. So it's, you can sort of get a vibe of it. You can sort of grasp it a little bit. But what I'm saying is, within infinity, right, everything is possible, which means anything that somebody says, it doesn't matter how crazy you think it is, in a certain reality, that is true. And if you believe that, to you, that's 100% true. It doesn't matter what somebody else says. Like, let's say somebody believes in flat Earth. It doesn't matter how much scientific evidence there is against it. It doesn't matter. If that person believes it, to them, in their reality, it's 100% real. And there's nothing you can do to change that, because they live in the reality where that's real, where that's a true fact. Just like no one's ever going to convince you that the Earth's flat because you believe it's round. That's 100% true to you. But how can you say, that somebody else doesn't believe, they only 99% believe the Earth is flat, and there's 1% that doesn't believe the Earth is flat, and therefore they're wrong. To them, they're right. So my whole point is, science is actually based on the opposite of what it pretends to be, which is factual. But if you think of science and fact, it's very one-dimensional and very closed. It's a very closed system, and it doesn't matter how much we study things, it doesn't matter how much science goes into things, science cannot expand as fast as the universe. There's no way science can ever catch up with the reality of things. And so when somebody tries to disprove you, saying you manifest your reality with science, and saying that they're actually using facts, they're actually being unfactual completely, because they haven't even taken the time to clear their thoughts and sit in silence and notice the presence that's here, and notice that if they're just present, nothing exists. Because if science is based off your direct experience of the factual universe, And if you are sitting with your eyes closed and meditating, you cannot say, and your thoughts are cleared, you cannot say anything exists. You can't prove it. It's impossible to prove. You can't prove that anything exists at all scientifically. You can't prove. So, this is just to sort of get you thinking, thinking about it a little bit. I'm not going to go into what I think science is, and, because I don't want to get too crazy on here. But another point that I like to make is I hear this thing called, they teach it in college, in schools. And it is causation versus correlation. That you need to discern causation between correlation to prove something, right? Like, let's say an apple falls from the tree, the theory is that it's because of gravity. And I'm not saying it's not. This is an example. So, the cause is gravity, right? But you actually cannot prove causation. It's not possible. It's all correlation every time. And science claims to only be based off causation and not correlation. But it's always based off correlation because it's possible to prove causation. It's sort of like, let's take smoking cigarettes. Here's a good example. Cigarettes cause cancer, right? It's a proven fact. Cigarettes cause cancer. But you have some people who smoke cigarettes, chain smoke cigarettes their whole life, and they lived 110, and they never get cancer. And you have some people who die at 30, right? And you say, well, all these people who are dying young are smoking cigarettes. So therefore, the cause is cigarettes. But that's not a cause. That's a correlation. That's a correlation, not a cause. Don't get the two confused. What's really happening, in my opinion, is people who smoke cigarettes tend to be more stressed out and tend to be more in a low vibration and tend to be more in their head and thinking more negatively, right? Because if you're smoking a cigarette, normally, and not always, like I said, some people have to be really old because they literally just love to smoke cigarettes. And therefore, it's not going to give them cancer because it's actually something they enjoy. But cigarettes are just a method for your manifestation of cancer. You're manifesting cancer. Cigarettes just happen to be the method of which you're manifesting cancer through because you're always in your mind thinking negatively. And so that's a correlation. That happens to be that cigarettes cause cancer. Just happens to be, when really, how do you know it's not the mind? Because I can tell you for a fact, most people who smoke cigarettes are more stressed out and more negative than people who don't smoke cigarettes. So therefore, you're right there. You're correlating. You're not proving causation. You're proving correlation, which science says is not factual if it's just a correlation. And all of science is based off of that. And it claims to not be. It claims to be all causation, but it's all correlation. Because there's no way you can ever prove causation because you cannot escape your own consciousness. And therefore you cannot prove causation. You can prove everything around it, but you can't prove it. It's impossible to prove something. It really is, if you really think about it. So that's just something to think about. And I know a lot of people would disagree with this, and a lot of people would, give me all these facts and shit. But what's a fact? Like, seriously. Anyone who, can't understand what I'm saying and who's basing their paradigm off of science doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry to say it. And there's very, very smart people, and I'm not trying to, scientists are awesome. Science is awesome. It's very cool, and nothing against it. But there is a righteous attitude that people take about it, and it's pretty silly when you think about it. And it's very condescending as well. And it's very what's the word? Non-inclusive of free thought. Because if you think of outside of science, then all of a sudden you're like this, like, you notice how people will attack you? Like, they get angry if you state something that is a little bit outside of science. And they're like, we're factual. We've come so far. We're so evolved. How could you do that? You know what I'm talking about. It's craziness. It's literal delusion at its finest. And we're very proud of it. And we're like, yeah. You know what I mean? And I do that too, so, But thanks for watching.